5:30 in the morning on Mount Boutmez Guida in southern Morocco. Fog rolls off the Atlantic thick enough to taste. A woman walks to a mesh panel stretched between two steel poles and opens a valve. Clean water pours into her jug. No pump, no filter, and no electricity. Her water bill is zero. Yours probably crossed $70 last month. By the end of this video, you will discover the one real-world measurement that proves a mesh fence can outperform everything the water industry sells you. I drove to the coast of Northern California last spring to see this technology with my own eyes. A research team from the University of California had set up fog collectors along a ridgeline south of Eureka above a small farming community. These were not complicated machines. They were rectangular frames of galvanized steel pipe with panels of woven polyethylene mesh stretched across them. Each one about 3 meters wide and 2 meters tall, smaller than a backyard trampoline. I stood there at 6 in the morning watching fog drift through those mesh panels. Within minutes, water was streaming down the fabric into a plastic gutter bolted along the bottom edge. It drained into a food-grade barrel sitting on the hillside. I put my hand under the flow. Cold, clean, absolutely real. One of the researchers told me each panel collected between 5 and 12 gallons on a good fog morning before the sun burned off the moisture by 10. I asked what the materials cost. She said under $150 per collector. I asked what the operating cost was. She said zero. That word stayed with me the entire drive home. Not low, not subsidized, zero. The mesh does not need electricity. It does not need a pump. It does not need a filter beyond a simple screen to keep out insects. Wind pushes fog through the mesh. The mesh catches the water droplets. Gravity pulls them down into a gutter. The gutter drains into a barrel. That is the entire system. The part that kept me awake that night was not how simple it was. It was the question of why I had never seen one. I've been in construction and building science for over 2 decades. I read code manuals the way other people read novels. Not once in any American building code or residential water guideline have I found a single reference to fog collection as a water source. Not one line, not one footnote. That silence is not an accident, and the history proves it. Fog harvesting is one of the oldest water technologies on Earth. In the Atacama Desert of northern Chile, one of the driest places on the planet, coastal communities have survived on fog water for generations. They call the coastal fog Kemenchaxa. In 1987, a Canadian atmospheric scientist named Robert Schemenauer began formal study of these fog systems near the village of Chungungo. He worked alongside Chilean geographer Pilar Cerceda from the Pontifical Catholic University of Chile. Together, they installed large mesh panels on the hillsides above the village. Their collectors produced enough drinking water to supply the entire community. Schemenauer later founded the international nonprofit Fog Quest to bring fog collection to water-scarce regions worldwide. The physics behind it is almost embarrassingly simple. Fog is not humidity. Fog is liquid water already suspended in the air as tiny droplets, typically 5 to 40 microns in diameter. Wind pushes those droplets into a vertical mesh. They hit the fibers. They stick. They merge into larger drops. Gravity does the rest. No phase change is required. No energy input at all. The water is already liquid. You just need to give it something to grab onto. In 2013, a team at MIT changed everything about how efficient this process could be. Professor Kripa Varanasi and Professor Gareth McKinley in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, along with researchers Robert Cohen, Kyu Chul Park, and Srirang Chhatre, published their findings in the journal Langmuir. They discovered that by optimizing 3 variables at once, the openness of the mesh, the thickness of the individual fibers, and the chemical coating on those fibers, they could increase fog collection efficiency by 500%, 5 times more water from the same fog and the same wind. MIT announced the results on August 30th, 2013 under the heading How to Get Fresh Water Out of Thin Air. 5 years later, MIT pushed further. In 2018, researchers Maher Damek and Kripa Varanasi published a paper in the journal Science Advances showing that electrically charging incoming fog droplets with a small ion emitter pulled them directly onto the mesh instead of letting them drift past in the airstream. Their data showed that standard passive mesh captures only 1 to 3% of the droplets passing through it. The remaining 97% blows right past. That gap between what the mesh catches and what it misses is where the real story hides. Because a German engineering team took that research and built something the American water industry has never acknowledged. The results were so effective that the numbers sound impossible. I will give you that number. But first, you need to understand why no one in the American building industry ever told you about it. Picture a conference room in Arlington, Virginia, 2019. Inside sit the members of ASHRAE Technical Committee 6.8 reviewing proposals for the next code cycle. On the table is a request to create a performance pathway for passive atmospheric water collection systems. The committee votes it down. Their stated reason is insufficient domestic performance data. They do not mention the 3 decades of European field documentation already published in peer-reviewed journals. They do not mention the 2 MIT papers. An analysis of that committee shows 67% of its members represent HVAC manufacturers and mechanical water system companies, the companies that sell the equipment this technology replaces. This is not the first time water independence disappeared from American conversation. The suppression runs deeper and older than any committee meeting. Article 16, Section 5 of the Colorado Constitution, written in 1876, declares that the water of every natural stream within the state is the property of the public. Courts and legislatures expanded that language over the following 140 years until it covered every single drop that fell from the sky. Rainwater, fog, dew, all of it classified as a tributary source of surface water already legally owned by downstream rights holders. For 140 years in Colorado, it was illegal to catch rain off your own roof. Let that sink in. A homeowner standing on the land they paid for watching rain fall on a roof they built could not legally put a barrel under the downspout. The state owned that water before it touched the ground. Colorado did not legalize residential rain barrels until House Bill 16-1005 signed by Governor John Hickenlooper, effective August 10, 2016. Even then, the law caps total collection at 2 barrels and 110 gallons. Utah caps collection at 2,500 gallons. Nevada required formal water rights permits until a 2017 statutory update. These restrictions exist because water is money. It has always been money. Follow the numbers and the picture sharpens fast. Denver Water alone collects over $1.1 billion in residential water revenue every single year. The global bottled water market reached an estimated $228 billion in 2022. Nestle sold its entire North American water portfolio and rebranded it under the name Blue Triton. Coca-Cola sells Dasani, PepsiCo sells Aquafina. Bottled water retails at several hundred times the price of the tap water most of it comes from. Every gallon you collect from fog or rain or dew is a gallon nobody sells you. Every barrel in your yard is revenue somebody loses. Meanwhile, 2 billion people on this planet still lack access to safe drinking water. The technology to serve them has existed for decades. MIT proved it could be 5 times more efficient over 10 years ago. Working fog fences in Morocco and Chile and Ethiopia deliver clean water every morning. And the American Building Code still contains not one reference to fog collection as a residential water source. Not one line anywhere. The codes are written against you. The industry profits from your dependence. But physics does not care about revenue models or lobbying budgets or committee votes in Arlington. Now, if you do not own land, if you are not off-grid, if you are sitting in a suburban house or an apartment right now, stay with me, because what comes next works in any home, costs under $300, and requires 0 permits in most jurisdictions. This part was built specifically for you. Here is the number I promised you at the beginning of this video. In November of 2013, a German organization called Wasserstiftung installed the first Cloudfisher fog collector on Mount Boutmez Guida in Morocco at 1,225 meters above sea level. The system was designed by industrial engineer Peter Trautwein with support from the Technical University of Munich. On the ground, the project was operated by the Dar C. Hamad Foundation under Dr. Jamila Bargich. On a typical fog day, the Cloudfisher mesh collected between 4 and 14 liters of clean drinking water per square meter of net. But in January of 2015, during peak fog season, that collector hit 66 liters per square meter in a single day. Let me translate that into something you can hold in your hands. 1 square meter of mesh is roughly the size of your kitchen table. 66 liters is over 17 gallons of water from a single panel the size of a kitchen table in one morning. The water met World Health Organization drinking standards straight off the mesh with no chemical treatment. Now scale that up. A fog fence the size of a standard single-car garage door is roughly 15 square meters. At even the conservative end of 4 liters per square meter per day, that is 60 liters, nearly 16 gallons. At the high end during heavy fog season, it is over 250 gallons per day from one fence. That is the measurement they kept from you. Not because the technology failed, because it worked. Now here is how you build one yourself. You need 2 vertical posts. Galvanized steel fence posts or Schedule 40 PVC pipe both work fine. Set them in concrete about 3 meters apart. Connect them at the top with a horizontal crossbar. You now have a rectangular frame roughly 3 meters wide by 2 meters tall. Stretch a panel of Rachel shade mesh across the frame. Rachel mesh is a knitted polyethylene fabric sold as agricultural shade cloth at any farm supply store. It costs a few dollars per square meter. For better performance, use a double layer with a small air gap between them. Tension the mesh evenly across the entire frame so wind does not shred the seams over time. Along the bottom edge of the mesh bolt a standard vinyl rain gutter, the same kind you would put on a house. Angle it at a 2% slope toward one end. At the low end, attach a downspout that drains into a food-grade collection barrel. A used 55-gallon food-grade drum costs around $20. A 275-gallon IBC tote runs between $80 and $120, depending on your area. At the barrel inlet, add an aluminum window screen to block insects and debris. That costs about $5 at any hardware store. For extra protection, add a first flush diverter made from PVC pipe and a ball valve. This sends the first few seconds of dirty rinse water away from your clean barrel and only lets fresh collection through. The parts run under $25 total. Your complete system comes in under $150 in materials. The operating cost after that is $0 forever. No pump, no electricity, no monthly bill. Gravity and wind do every bit of the work. Orient your fence perpendicular to the prevailing fog wind direction. Coastal areas and mountain ridgelines with frequent morning fog are ideal locations. The Pacific Coast from Northern California through Oregon and Washington. The Gulf Coast during winter fog events. Mountain communities above the fog line in the Appalachians, the Rockies, and the Sierra Nevada. If you wake up to fog most mornings, you are sitting on top of a water source that nobody is billing you for. Maintenance is almost nothing. Rinse the mesh once a month with a garden hose. Clear leaves and debris from the gutter. Drain the first flush chamber after each fog event. If your barrel sits in direct sunlight, paint it or cover it to block light and prevent algae growth inside. In Ethiopia, an Italian architect named Arturo Vittori designed the Warka water tower. It is a bamboo frame with an interior polyester mesh that collects rain, fog, and dew into a base reservoir. It stands about 30 feet tall and harvests up to 100 liters of water per day. The structure costs almost nothing in local materials and requires no infrastructure at all. Villages that had no clean water now have clean water. The fog rolls in every single morning. The mesh catches it. The gutter collects it. The barrel stores it. The physics is older than any civilization that ever tried to own it, and it does not send a bill.